everyone, this is Risa. Have you ever had that moment when you think, yay, I finished making this really cool and big amazing cosplay for competition, but I can't walk. How do I bring it to that contest? Or I want to do this really cool but big or cumbersome cosplay, but I can't figure out how to walk in it, so I will never buy or make that cosplay. And even if the first two don't apply, have you ever worn a cosplay to a contest or event that caused mobility problems you never predicted? Like a dress with a several foot long train, or ridiculous shoes that hurt your feet, or some gigantic wings that were cumbersome to navigate? Well, I have some tips for you. So a quick disclaimer, this video only applies to temporary costume mobility issues. I hope this video opens the door to conventions improving their ADA accessibility, because cosplayers that require mobility aids will absolutely encounter these issues if they're in a wheelchair, they use canes, or any other type of mobility equipment. Speaking of which, one thing I do want to emphasize is, if someone is fully able-bodied, please try not to use a wheelchair unless you have no other choice. Wheelchairs at venues are reserved for medical use, and temporarily putting on a costume that prevents walking is not quite a medical emergency. There's also way more to this discussion, but that's a topic I'm not qualified to cover. I don't have the experience to speak on ADA accessibility, and I would highly encourage someone who does have first-hand experience to share your tips and advice. So disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. I asked some fellow con attendees, volunteers, judges, and staff on how they prefer to be notified about a complicated mobility situation. Sumikins, a former contest coordinator, said this: "Coordinators would appreciate you ask. We've had people show up in or with things they didn't really make clear to us ahead of time, and if we'd known about them, we probably would have said no or made rules about them. Coordinators may know about safety issues that apply to the stage area that aren't as much of a concern on the con floor. The word of advice is, read the rules. If it's not in the rules, but it's bigger than the door, or requires stilts in any way, ask. Just because a rule doesn't exist doesn't mean it's actually okay. It just means the team hasn't encountered or thought of it yet." Well, I've been bringing some immobile merfolk tale cosplays to conventions and other events, including contests. Here are some tips based on mine, other attendees, and other staff experiences. These will mostly apply to contests, but it could be helpful to consider when navigating an event in general. Number 1. Check the rules first. Email the coordinator or the con to officially obtain permission and have a plan of action on what accommodations you'll need. Number 2. Ask about the judging room setup and stage setup ahead of time, including ADA ramps, which venues should have. Make sure to be polite and professional to the staff, as they are human, and being rude will probably get you declined. But at the same time, advocate for your needs, especially if it's ADA reliant. Number 3. In your build book, provide detailed photos of what your cosplay looks like on you or your model to prove what it looks like fit-wise, especially if you or your model won't be wearing it during prejudging. Also, plan your speech and time yourself. And here are some accommodation recommendations if the contest organizers don't already have a system set up for you. Consider asking for your cosplay to be brought to prejudging on a mannequin or a garment rack so that all pieces are easily visible for you to explain and for the judges to see everything. This is especially true if you'll be in stilts that will be taller than the door of the prejudging room. For YumeCon, I got permission to bring my Gyarados cosplay to prejudging on a styrofoam head and rack. I made sure to include photos in my build book of what the cosplay looked like on me to show fit. For MagWest, we were not allowed to bring our cosplays on a separate rack, but I was able to have my handler help me carry Melodic's tail while I wore everything else. If you literally cannot walk in your cosplay, consider asking to be carried on stage, to sit on stage, or to be wheeled on stage. If you are artificially tall, like in stilts or abnormally tall heels, consider asking for a backstage resting chair or wall. If you take up a lot of space or you're on wheels, Ask them for a different backstage waiting spot, and if there are ADA accommodating methods you can use to get on stage, such as a ramp or an elevating platform, instead of staircases. Bring your own handlers and mobility methods. For example, a wagon if you're in a merfolk tale, and a staff or walking stick if you're in stilts. Make sure that the staff has communicated to security about your unique costume situation. Make sure to attend tech rehearsals so that you can check out how to get from the dressing room onto the stage. Bring water to stay hydrated, as you'll likely be in this uncomfortable costume or mobility situation for several hours. And this one should be a no-brainer, but be nice to staff and always put safety first. Always be mindful and aware of your surroundings. We wouldn't want anyone to fall off stage, injuring yourself or others. You don't want to be the reason that they end up banning your type of cosplay in the future. For example, let's start with something simple. This was just a street festival, but I asked the contest runners before putting on my skates. And this is a totally real reenactment of how my handlers pulled me along in a wagon to get everywhere. For most people in the mer community, this is sufficient land transportation. However, when it's an elevated stage at a con instead, this is how I got on and off the stage.
Cosplay coming up. We have Risa coming up, and she's cosplaying as Melodic from Pokemon. Make some noise! So, this Melodic, shout out to her helpers. They're awesome. I mean, come on. It's kind of hard to walk around when your legs aren't tail, am I right?
And last example, when I was asking other people for their experience, the most common topic was actually about stilts. Several people gave me examples of unbalanced stilts causing mobility issues to not just the cosplayer wearing it, but also staff and other attendees. You don't want to be the problem and the reason why a con implements a new rule. So those are all the tips that I have for you today. Hopefully these will make your experience smoother. Do you have any personal experience or advice for bringing cosplays with literally big builds or complicated mobility? I'd love to hear any of your stories or suggestions in the comments. Hopefully we can keep this conversation going, and as always, stay safe everyone! Thank you to everyone that contributed to both my original post and this video. All of the lovely folks are listed on the screen, along with several anonymous staff acquaintances and friends, and many more. Also, major thanks to my handlers Glasses.guy.cos, Echo Cosplay, Hurt.train, and everyone else who made this possible.